Hey everyone, konnichiwa. Today we're going to be looking at how to make potentials in Japanese. When we talk about potentials in Japanese, we're basically making sentences in Japanese that are similar in English ones to the words can or able to do. So we have some little rules with this, but you can eat, you can drink, you can go, or you can do this thing, these kind of sentences. Now there's kind of two levels of difficulty here. There is the kind of N5 difficulty, which would be the koto ga dekimasu or koto ga dekiru type of creation. And then more the N4 level, JLPT N4 level, which is the verb conjugation thing, which is going to depend if it's a ru verb or u verb or one of our exceptions. So we'll start off with the easy one. The koto ga dekiru one is really, we just add this to the plain form of a verb to say that we can do that thing. So it's made up of three little parts, koto, ga, and dekiru. Now, koto, there's kind of a long explanation why we need this. The kind of short answer is that Japanese doesn't like to add two verbs together. So we add some stuff in between so that there's technically not two verbs. But koto, if we look it up in the dictionary, it kind of is like a generic event or thing that happens. And we attach it to the verb that we can do, or we want to talk about that we can do. Now, a little bit of a trick I like to tell my students is that you translate the verb with koto as the act of that verb. So, taberu koto, the act of eating. Tsukau koto, the act of using. Nomu koto, the act of drinking. Okay, so that's kind of what you got there. Then we've got the second part, which is ga. Now this is just our particle, which is kind of pointing to the verb and saying, well, this is the thing that it is you can do. And the final piece of the puzzle is we're going to add the word dekiru or dekimasu. All right. Now, dekiru is itself a potential verb that we're going to see in the next section of the video, but dekiru basically means can do. So if you know the verb suru, which is to do something, dekiru is the potential version of this verb. Suru, to do, dekiru, can do. So when we take something like taberu koto ga dekiru, really what we're saying is, if you read it from the back, we can, and then ga is pointing to doing the thing that, taberu koto, the act of eating. So that's basically what we have. Okay, so that's the N5 level stuff, all right? The koto ga dekiru stuff. More of the N4 competency is we're doing an actual verb conjugation. Now, if you don't know how to classify verbs, I've got a video, you can find it up in the corner here about how to classify verbs. Have a watch of that if this is not your strong point, because you will need to know this skill pretty well to be able to deal with the potential verb conjugation style. But it's going to depend if it's a ru verb, u verb, or an exception. Now, ru verbs are nice and easy, so we'll do those first. Basically, you want to get the ru verb, so taberu, for example, drop the ru and add rareru, rareru. So tabe rareru, all right? So we can eat, tabe rareru. Now, in reality, Japanese people do tend to drop this ra a lot, but technically the correct way to say it is tabe rareru, but Japanese people often don't say this, right? So speaking casually, you will often drop this. So that's the same, mirareru, tabe rareru, this kind of stuff. U verbs, a little bit more tricky, but pretty much the same. U verbs, we're going to be dropping that last U sound and replacing it with the equivalent E sound. So if we take iku as an example here, ikeru, right? We add a ru onto the end of it as well. Ikeru. And so we got nomu, nomeru, yomu, yomeru, hanasu, hanaseru. Okay, that's how we make it. Last little category we have is our exceptions, and this is suru and kuru. There's no real rule here, you just have to memorize them. But suru becomes dekiru, we saw that word before, and kuru becomes korareru. Bit of a hard one to remember, that one, but used a lot in Japanese. Last little bit we have to kind of focus on is the particles, all right? So it's a bit inconsistent how these are used, but the general rule of thumb is that the potential verbs technically can't take a direct object. Now, if that doesn't mean anything to you, don't worry. It didn't mean anything to me when I started learning Japanese, but it means that we can't use our or particle that we normally use with verbs, all right? So we say gohan o taberu. With the potential, you can't really do that. So you tend to substitute or for wa or ga. So, ご飯が食べられる. ご飯は食べられる. Now, there are a few annoying exceptions to this. One I notice quite a lot is you tend to say nihongo, or Japanese people tend to say eigo o hanaseru. Okay, so they're using the o and hanaseru, which is the potential of hanasu, but that's kind of an exception. Generally, the wa ga thing in place of o tends to work. Now, there is one extra little thing I'd like to mention when we're dealing with our exceptions, and that is we have these kind of two additional words of mieru and kikoeru. Now, I kind of take this tip from Tae Kim's website, which is where I'm getting most of this material from, but it's best to think of mieru as the word visible. Now, we can hear that word able in there, right? Able. So visible is you're able to see it, and kikoeru is audible, right? It's kind of the same pattern. Now, we can also say mirareru, all right? Because miru is a ru verb, so it's the mirareru. And we can also say, if we take the word for hear, kiku, kikeru, all right? So both of these exist in Japanese, but they are slightly different. So we'll look at some example sentences to see the differences, but basically we can pair mirareru and kikeru together as an opportunity to see and an opportunity to listen to something, whereas mieru and kikoeru are more visible and audible respectively. That's a bit abstract. We'll read some sentences to get an idea. So for example, we could say, 今日は晴れて富士山が見える. So 見える is visible. So we can see Fujisan. Now, 今日は晴れて, today is clear. Well, this is probably talking about someone in Tokyo. Unless the weather is clear, you can't actually see Fujisan from Mount Fuji from Tokyo generally. It's close, but not quite close enough with the pollution or whatever in the sky. But if it's clear, you can. All right. So mieru, visible. It's a problem with visibility, right? You normally can't see it. It's not a chance to see something per se. So a chance would be more something like this. Tomodachi no okage de eiga wa tada de mirareta. So this, you're talking about seeing a movie for free because of your friend. Now, this is not really a visibility problem, okay? Your eyes work fine, you can see the movie fine, but because of your friend who knows someone or whatever, they've got you a ticket so you can see the movie. So it's more like an opportunity. And that's the kind of divide you want to put in your head. It's visibility versus an opportunity to see. I know they might seem similar, but that's basically how I think of it. Now, the same thing exists for kikeru versus kikoeru. So if we go to our sentences, hisashiburi ni kare no koe ga kiketa. So again, kiketa, it's an opportunity. So an opportunity to hear his voice for the first time in a long time. So this might be, they called you on Skype, right? So it's like a friend of yours who's moved overseas, you haven't caught up with them for years, and they call you on Skype or whatever, and then so you hear their voice. And so it's not really an audibility thing. You can hear it fine, it's coming through fine, but it's the opportunity to hear his voice, which is what you're trying to emphasize. Now, if we do about the audibility thing, we got a sentence like, 周りがうるさくて、彼が言ってることがあんまり聞こえなかった. Okay, so here we got a 周りがうるさくて. It's a noisy surrounds. And because of that, you know, there's some guy standing over there saying something, but you can't hear what he says, right? So 聞こえなかった. Right, so that's kind of the difference between these two. All right, guys, that's it from me. Please leave a like. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I try and put out videos which have a lot of likes and comments on them. So if this kind of content is up your alley, please do leave a like and a comment because it tells me that this is what you want to hear. Otherwise, leave a suggestion in the comments of what I should do next. If you found this video very useful, I'd really appreciate it if you shared it to some family and friends who are interested in learning Japanese. You can get a whole Japanese course, basically, on this YouTube channel for free. So if it's what you'd like, please subscribe and you'll get more. Otherwise, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. じゃあねー。